Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to episode number 17 of the Free State Sports Podcast. We're going to get into a whole bunch of football stuff in this episode. We got a lot of playoff stuff to talk about. Playoffs are in full swing. If you enjoy what you hear, be sure to support us. We're available on Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. All the links are in the description. Please go follow us. We would really love you to check out our Instagram. Our guy Saquon's been putting in a ton of work over there. And for everybody that's been tuning in, we appreciate your support as always. I'm here joined by one of my two co-hosts today, Andrew. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Fresh off of a Ravens victory yesterday.
Hell yeah, they look good. And we're going to get into all the playoff games and the playoff bracket and not analyze all that here in a little bit. But I want to talk about some major changes around the NFL, as obviously a lot of the lower tier teams that ended up not making the playoffs are making a lot of coaching changes and things of that nature. So I want to start off with Las Vegas. We have some interesting stuff going on over there. There could be a huge looming shift in the culture over there, as their star edge rusher, Max Crosby, spoke out, previously being adamant about the team making Antonio Pierce their permanent head coach, who has now been fired by the Raiders. This comes from athlonsports.com, but Crosby said on an episode of the Rush podcast that there's going to be decisions to be made, not only on a personal level. I got to make the decision that's best for me, and I'm going to see. Crosby said, obviously we don't know what the coach is going to look like, the front office. There's going to be a lot of changes again. He said, I will say this, obviously there's been back and forth. Everyone's has an opinion about this and that, but he thinks Mark's been dope. Mark Davis truly wants to win more than anything, and they are all fully aligned with that. All they want to do is win. All he wants to do is win. Number one most important thing to Max Crosby is the winning. So the Raiders have also parted ways with their GM, Tom Telesco. I think that's how you say it. It looks like telescope without the PE, so I'm going to assume that's how you say it. But they've parted ways with their GM as well as their head coach. So, Andrew, what are your thoughts on what that might mean for Las Vegas?
I mean, first of all, I just want to say it is absolutely heartbreaking to see that coach get fired. Yeah. That was Antonio Pierce?
Yep.
Yeah. Antonio Pierce, I mean, what did you expect him to do this season? Like, honestly, you're giving him Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. What do you expect to happen going forward for the rest of the season? He's never given himself a chance to be a good head coach. You gave him no weapons. I think he did solidly on the defense. He's tried his best to win games, but Aiden O'Connell clearly isn't it. And Gardner Minshew, it clearly isn't it. So what do you actually expect to happen there? You know what I mean, Mike?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that fits in with a theme that we're going to notice as we talk about these changes in this portion of the podcast. But there's a lot of teams that seem to be giving up on their coaches way too early, in my opinion.
Some of those decisions I do agree with. Like the Patriots coach firing.
Yep.
I think we're going to get into that later, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can transition into it right now. It's not far off in my notes here, but the Patriots did fire the head coach, Jerome Mayo, after one season. A report has come out via The Athletic that I thought this was interesting, so I threw this in here, but there was a report that he surprised team executives and coaches when he opted to play cards with players instead of watch film with the assistant coaches on the plane ride back from the loss to the Cardinals. I thought that was kind of funny. Consensus seems to be that he's just not ready to be a coach, but I got to ask the question, do you think his firing comes too soon?
No, I absolutely don't think his firing's too soon. I don't think he's ready to be a head coach, and I think he's going to be best suited as a coordinator somewhere other than the Patriots organization. I don't think the Patriots are going to bring him back at all.
I would agree with that. I think they do have some talent at the quarterback position over there. They just can't seem to figure out who they really want to be their set starter moving forward. But I will say, when they had Joe Milton in, I thought he looked pretty good, and I was high on him to start the season. So that they got some talent over there. Obviously, they're still in a rebuilding phase, but I'm not too surprised about the Jerome Mayo situation. It didn't really seem like he just didn't do much. He was just kind of there this season. So
yep.
I don't know. When you have notes coming out about things like that, and granted they already had a pretty bad losing record at that point, but I don't know. When you have things coming out like that and you're already struggling as a head coach, kind of just goes to show that you might just not be ready for that position.
No, that is absolutely fair enough.
Yeah, I think seems to be the consensus across the board.
I mean, and I'm pretty sure Patriots had a lot of clock management issues throughout the season as well.
They did. Yeah.
I think that's a very important part of being a head coach is managing the clock. I can't remember which head coach struggled with that, and he got himself an assistant just to help with managing the clock.
Oh wow!
I can't for the life of me remember who that was.
I don't think I ever even heard about that. To be honest with you,
was it a Jaguars head coach?
It might have been. That sounds like something they would do.
I think it might have been Urban Meyer.
That sounds like something he would do too. But speaking of the Patriots, and this was a separate section in my notes before today, but the news broke just recently that former Titans head coach has been hired as the new Patriots head coach.
Oh.
Mike Vrabel played 14 seasons as a linebacker. He won 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots. Kind of poetic to see him over there as head coach. He saw a brief little stint of success in Tennessee before they started to fall off. Andrew, what do you think of that fit?
I never had a problem with Mike Vrabel.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Sound it out. Vrabel. It's like Abel.
Mike.
There you go.
I've never had a problem with him. I thought he was great in Tennessee. I thought that Tennessee had a cap with Ryan Tannehill as their quarterback. And that's what they experienced multiple years. And then that devastating injury to Derrick Henry really put a dent in the Tennessee season. And that's the same season he got fired in Tennessee. Coming off of Derrick Henry's injury. I feel like it was a contentious firing at that time. A lot of people were like, why move on from him? He had Tennessee in the AFC Conference Championship years prior to him getting fired.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to see him on the Patriots. I think he's a great head coach. He's going to help rebuild this dynasty with the Patriots. That's my hot take.
I would agree with that. I never thought he was a bad coach. Like you said, it kind of seemed like all the struggles that the Titans had as an organization came at the same time. Ended up releasing Derrick Henry, who's producing monster numbers for the Ravens right now. They released, who was the wide receiver? Help me out. I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, they traded away DeAndre Hopkins.
That's right. Yep. They traded DeAndre Hopkins, got rid of Derrick Henry. So they were kind of just been falling apart over there for a while. But I've always thought that Mike Vrabel was a very capable coach. So I'm excited to see what he could do with the Patriots. I think he could end up being a good fit over there. So,
by the way, it's Vrabel.
Mike.
Miguel. I'm keeping all that in, man. I just had a stroke and a half.
Happens to the best of us. But speaking of the Titans, while we're on that subject, they actually fired their GM after just 2 seasons. Their, I believe, controlling owner was quoted in saying, "It's impossible to ignore that our football team hasn't improved over the past 2 years." She said, "I am deeply disappointed in our poor win-loss record during this period, of course, but my decision also speaks to my concern about our long-term future should we stay the course." Again, is it possible that they may be making moves too soon over there, or do you think this is justified, Andrew?
I mean, you can absolutely look at them making moves too soon. Like, the GM's been there for 2 years. It's hard to turn around a whole team in 2 years.
I mean, it's hard for a coach to do anything in 2 years, let alone a general manager.
Yeah, and I get that you want your general manager to be able to make as much great decisions as they can. You know what I mean?
Right.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, where was their opportunity to do better?
Yeah.
They lost out on Derrick Henry, but how much of that was on Derrick Henry wanting to leave?
Right.
They traded away D-Hop, which was absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah.
D-Hop is an incredible talent, and you guys are rolling out... What, Will Levis? Was it Levis?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're rolling out Will Levis. Mason Rudolph. And you think you're going to succeed with this offense?
Right.
They are, like, I think the only top talent on that team is Simmons.
Yeah.
The lineman, Jeffrey Simmons, I believe his name is.
I think so.
And he's one of the best players on their team. That is a cornerstone they can build their defense on. But other than that, whoever you bring in, you're not going to get any short-term success.
Yeah.
So who are you going to blame? Like, who are you blaming here?
Right.
Are you blaming the coach you fired a few years back? Are you blaming this GM you hired 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Who is to blame besides probably poor ownership?
Right. And no doubt.
That's what is affecting a lot of these franchises that
agree.
are like just poor franchises, the poverty franchises, the Browns.
Even the Cowboys, in my opinion, with Jerry Jones, I just don't see him reaching that next level under his ownership. So
again, it's all Jerry's fault.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to say a prayer to God saying, I swear to God, all I want is the Cowboys to win this championship. And they did win that championship. And never again.
Yeah, terrible this year. So poor ownership can really
not
affect
on the
team.
Cowboys, really.
Yeah.
Dak got injured. They had Zeke as a running back.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened there. They already released him again. There's been a lot of... It feels like the teams that didn't make the playoffs were just so chaotic this year.
This feels like a Madden franchise league. I'm not gonna lie.
It really does.
It does. It just... People want to be in win now mode so bad.
Yeah.
But they don't look at the roster and they're like, yeah, this team can win. Like honestly, and I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this from Bengals fans everywhere. But do you really think the Bengals deserve to be in the playoffs?
Right.
Oh, I mean, like, look at the Broncos. Yeah, okay, you beat the Broncos, cool, but they won more games than you.
Yeah.
They're the better team than you because they won more games than you.
Exactly.
You beat the Broncos in overtime.
Mm.
In overtime. It's not like you unequivocally blew them out.
Right.
You beat them in overtime. You like to make a lot of excuses for your team, but when it comes down to it, week 1, you lost 10-16 to the Patriots.
Yeah.
To the Jared Mayo Patriots. To the Jacoby Brissett Patriots.
Yeah. That's all very true. Can't argue with any of that.
Yeah, where's the accountability for your team? Joe Burrow struggles in the first half of the season. Mm-hmm. Every season. If you go back, 1-4 start a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Like 2-3 start years before that. It's like, how can you look at this team and be like, this is a Super Bowl team? They can't even make the playoffs.
Right.
This is the second year in a row. Oh, man, I'm going off. I love Joe Burrow. But the man is too good for the Bengals.
I agree.
I would let him and Jamar Chase go somewhere else. Somewhere, maybe in the NFC.
Right.
Well away from the Ravens.
Yeah, preferably, yes. Well, it's funny you should bring that up, actually, because here in my notes, I have another thing about the Bengals.
Okay.
While we're on the subject of coaches, another coach that might be in the hot seat after this season.
Shouldn't be a might.
Is Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. The Bengals finished 9-8 and did not make the playoffs despite Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase finishing with astronomical numbers. Burrow finished the season as the NFL leading passer with 43 touchdowns, 4,900 yards. Jamar Chase finished the season as the leading receiver with 1,700 yards and 17 touchdowns.
The Triple Crown winner.
Yeah,
receptions, touchdowns, yards.
Yep, and I got to be honest, I don't know if I've ever seen an offensive tandem run that wild and not make the playoffs, much less barely have a record above 500. The defense did finish 25th overall, so you could say that they have some blame on them. But Andrew, who do you think's to blame, and do you think it's Zach Taylor, the defense, a little bit of both, and do you think that this might be Zach Taylor's last year as the head coach?
It's probably not going to be Zach Taylor's last year as a head coach, but I say it should be.
Yeah.
I'd say who the blame isn't on. It's not on Joe Burrow. It's not on Jamar Chase. It's not on T. Higgins. It's not on anyone on the offense besides the offensive line, which has continuously been a terrible, terrible aspect of the Bengals game.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow is sacked way too often. I can't remember how many times he got sacked this year.
A lot.
48 sacks this season.
That is a significant amount.
Yep. Including 7 sacks against Denver. But 48 sacks. That is an astronomical number of sacks
That's
to take in the season.
Almost 3 sacks a game.
Yeah.
It evens out to.
Yeah. So I don't know how you expect your team to win when you're consistently behind the sticks. When your quarterback doesn't have time to make a play down the field. It's pretty much throw it up to Jamar Chase and get him down the field.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow would have been the MVP this year if his team won games.
Yep.
But I don't know how you can look at a team that didn't make the playoffs, got swept by the Ravens, lost to the Steelers, Once to the Steelers and had a close second game with the Steelers.
Right.
I don't know how you can look at that and be like, yeah, they deserve to be in the playoffs.
I would agree with that 100%.
And a lot of it is Zach Taylor. I mean, we watched that game together, the Bengals-Ravens game, where Zach Taylor decided to go for it on 3rd and 1, and he took a deep shot.
And then
on 4th and 1, a second deep shot. And it wasn't like those deep shots even went to Jamar Chase.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one went to a tight end and the other went to T. Higgins, I believe. That is not a play call that can win you a game. I understand wanting to take, 3rd and 1, let's take a deep shot, and if we miss, we got 4th and 1 to fall back on.
Right.
Can understand that. But that's not what happened.
Yeah, that felt like one of the moments where he's just trying way too hard to be unpredictable.
Yeah.
A little reverse psychology in there, but...
They expect us to run it, so we're going to throw it deep.
Yeah.
We just threw it deep. They won't ever expect it again.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think I agree. It should be Zach Taylor's last year. I think he's holding the team back. I think the defense could use a little bit of work, but I also think without proper leadership as a head coach, you're not going to... It baffles me how the numbers that Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow finished with, and the fact that they're 9-8.
Yes.
That should never be the case when you have two of the top players in the league.
It's also their special teams that lost them a few games. I know they had that missed field goal against the Ravens in overtime.
Yeah.
And then they followed that up with the missed field goal against Denver in overtime that ended up not biting them in the butt.
Yeah.
Good on them.
Yep. Yeah, that's all very valid. But speaking of coaches that might be in the hot seat, let's talk a little bit about somebody that you wanted to talk about, Andrew, Mike McDaniel in Miami.
Yeah.
You said you had some thoughts on him and his poor record against winning teams. What are your thoughts on where he sits after the season?
So, Mike McDaniel is a fantastic, charismatic head coach, except he's only one of those things in my opinion. I think he beats up on bad competition, which is what you should do as a head coach, right?
Right.
Mike McDaniel is 29 and... I lost the number. Hold on. He's 23-9 against teams with a record below 500. That is great. For teams with records above 500 and with... teams with records above 500, he has a losing record. He is 3-13.
That's not good.
3-13. I don't know how... you can I get it. He is funny. He's charismatic. He's looks like a great leader. But I mean, it brings me back to when everyone thought he was the greatest coach of all time because they dropped 70 against Denver.
Right.
Denver at that time had Russell Wilson and was just an overall bad team.
Yeah.
I really don't think that Mike McDaniel is a reason why they dropped 70 on Denver. I think that if you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, it's going to be hard not to drop 70 against any team. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think when you have Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, it's going to be hard not to drop 50 in a game.
Exactly.
But whenever he plays good competition, he gets out-coached. Straight up out-coached. As long as you're a better coach than him, you can, and that's not what you want from your head coach. You want your coach to be competitive in every single game they play.
Yeah.
That's something you can't really knock John Harbaugh on. That's something you can't knock a lot of players. I guess Zach Taylor, too. Mm-hmm. Competitive in every game he's played this year.
Right.
Except for against the Patriots. But I just don't understand how we can look at a guy who has a losing record against teams just above 500. I'm talking 1-0, 2-0, 2-2. As long as, I don't know how we can look at that and be like, this guy is an elite head coach. This guy deserves his job at Miami. I think questions he's been starting getting raised. And he's been put in this position a lot where he's got to win out. You are not playing in the NFC.
Right.
In the NFC, you can make the playoffs with a subpar record. And subpar, But in the AFC, the Dolphins missed out on making the playoffs with a 10-7 record.
Yeah.
10-7. That is a dominant record.
Yep.
This year they were 9-8. They're good, but that's all they'll ever be. Good.
Right.
They're going to be just like the Steelers, mediocre. Congratulations, winning season.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
And people put Mike Tomlin on the hot seat and not Mike McDaniels? 2 mics?
Right. Yeah, we're going to talk about him too, but real quick before we do, while we're on
Sorry, that got ranty.
Hey, you're good. I love it. But talking about Miami, let's talk a little bit about one of their star players, Tyreek Hill. He said he's out in Miami, though his agent recently said he's still committed to the team and was only speaking out of frustration with the last loss of the season against the Jets, of all teams. Speaking of the Jets, this attitude that he has kind of reminds me of somebody else and their ego. His name rhymes with Baron Dodgers.
No, I would never compare Tyreek Hill and Aaron Rodgers' ego.
You don't think so?
No, they're not even in the same ballpark. I understand why Tyreek Hill left the Chiefs. A lot of people like to give him flack on it. But if he stayed on the Chiefs, he wasn't getting paid. He wasn't getting the money.
That's fair, too.
Because all that money, $500 million for 10 years went to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I didn't blame him for leaving KC. You got to do what's best for business.
But a lot of people are chalking that up and Miami up to the same thing. He then said, Tua has the best arm in the league. I understand wanting to hype up your quarterback.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay? I understand wanting to get behind your guys. That's why I don't give too much flack to Patrick Queen until he started running his mouth that Pittsburgh's got better food than Baltimore.
Which is insane, by the way.
Pittsburgh doesn't even have better food than Cincinnati.
You know what? That's going to be our poll of the podcast. Who has better food, Pittsburgh or Baltimore?
Or Cincinnati.
Yeah, we'll
They're
put all
big on
three
their
up.
Skyline chili.
Yeah, well, fucking dog food. No, all right, sorry. Poll of the podcast. Which city has better food? Make sure you vote.
Well, we'll even throw Cleveland in there, but...
Yeah. But, I see where you're coming from. I didn't hate him for leaving the Chiefs. That was obviously a business decision, and it obviously worked out for him.
Yeah.
If he's truly venting his frustration and he's not actually just giving up on his team, that's fine. Players get frustrated, especially when you're a talented player, and he's kind of struggled this year, but also his team struggled this year.
It seems like year after year after year, he's not in control of what happens with his team. And I think that's a big problem, right? When he was in KC, Patrick Mahomes is there. He doesn't have to worry about Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes doesn't get injured.
Right.
Patrick Mahomes takes care of himself. Patrick Mahomes gets him the football. But Tua gets injured. Tua runs headfirst into brick walls.
Yeah.
That man is going to have so many concussions, he's going to become immune to concussions.
Yeah, his brain needs to be studied for science.
And that's nothing against Tua. I genuinely think Tua can succeed in the NFL. I just never think he's going to be in that elite quarterback conversation.
Right.
I think he's going to be the Ryan Tannehills, the Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Ryans of the world.
Right.
Yeah. The Mark Ryan Sanchez. I'm kidding. But with Tyreek, I understand. He is one of the best wide receiver talents in the NFL.
Yeah.
Maybe behind Justin Jefferson. Maybe behind, he's at least top 5,
Mm-hmm.
And there's not many people I would take over Tyreek Hill.
Right.
So when you're the premier wide receiver and you're missing the playoffs again,
yeah.
When your team was one and done last year, you're missing the playoffs this year. I can understand his frustration. I can understand wanting out on the team. I can even understand something that he accidentally said. Now, I don't think it was an accident. I think he's leaving this offseason. And I think the team made him retract his statement.
That's probably true. Either his team or his agent. Probably some damage control going on over there. But, I don't know. It'll be interesting to follow him this offseason, that's for sure. Definitely a very talented player, so I'm anxious to see where he'll end up. Hopefully he doesn't become one of those players that carries an ego around. But time will tell. But another coach that has actually recently been let go is the Jaguars head coach, Doug Peterson, who's been fired. Andrew, do you think that's the right move for the Jaguars?
The Jaguars. The Jaguars is a revolving door of coaches at this point.
It really is.
Do I think that Doug Peterson's a problem in Jacksonville? No. I think Jacksonville's a problem in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I think that they're hanging on to Trevor Lawrence. I guarantee you, Doug Peterson didn't give Trevor Lawrence a crap ton of money.
Right.
To stay in Jacksonville.
A lot of money. That's going to cause them a lot of problems moving forward, too. And getting a new coach definitely isn't going to fix that.
You know, I'm just going to say, when you're historically a bad team, when you're a bad franchise, you know who's going to come play for you?
Absolutely nobody.
Bad player.
Yeah. Yeah, they're in an unfortunate situation over there. I don't think firing the coach is the right move. A lot of these teams seem to think that switching leadership is the answer to every problem. I don't know. They still got to answer for giving Trevor Lawrence all that money. That's all I know. They got a lot of things to figure out over there, and especially moving forward, it's not looking good for them for quite a while. So we'll see what happens with them.
Can't be really too mad at Doug Peterson though. But I don't mind the firing at all.
Yeah.
I think that his coaching days are past his prime since he's won the Super Bowl. I don't think he's the same coach, right? That was Doug Peterson, right? Who won it with the Eagles?
I believe so, yeah.
I think his coaching days are past his prime. I think that he's going to be getting outcoached by newer coaches or older coaches like Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
John Harbaugh.
Right.
I think that maybe it's time for a fresh change to Jacksonville from the top down.
That's fair. Yeah, we'll see what the future brings for them. Briefly talked about the Ravens and the Steelers, and we're going to talk more about that here in just a second. But speaking of all these changes that are going on around the NFL, there were a few teams recently that requested to interview Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken. The Raiders were one of them. Right after that firing of Antonio Pierce, they joined the Bears and the Jaguars, who have also expressed interest in hiring him. Andrew, we see this a lot with our coaching staff as Ravens fans, and of course it's not really uncommon across the league either when a team has success. But where do you think Todd's going to end up next year? Do you think he's going to stay with us?
I think he's going to end up in the unemployment line because he's a piece of crap human being. I heard he clubs baby seals with baby seals. All right. I heard he adopts kids.
Yeah,
just to let them watch him leave the adoption agency.
I heard he's actually, despite what you see, he doesn't actually coach, and you don't want him to be your coach.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Lamar Jackson's the reason why the Ravens succeed.
Yeah, you definitely do not want to hire Todd Monken. I can promise you that.
I think John Harbaugh should retire, and Todd Monken should head coach the Ravens.
I wouldn't hate it, to be honest. I wouldn't hate it at all. I am curious where Harbaugh is going to end up, too. I know he's still on a deal and all that good stuff, but he's getting up there in age, too. So the whole Ravens coaching staff is going to be interesting to follow this.
In all seriousness, Monken is a fantastic offensive coordinator.
He is.
Whether or not that can transition to being a head coach, I cannot tell. Mm-hmm. There seems to be this whole thing where Ravens coaching staffs get signed away and then fired within a few years.
Yeah.
That's the same thing everywhere. Like when Bill Belichick was dominant, they would continuously hire coaching staff from his team, and they never succeeded on the second level, which would be head coaching.
Right.
So I'm interested to see what happens there.
Yeah, I like his. He's got like a no nonsense type of old school attitude to him. I really like what he did with Georgia and what he's done with the Ravens and the way he's turned it around since we moved on from Greg Roman, Mr. Screen himself. So, yeah, I would hate to lose him as a Ravens fan, but...
Speaking of Greg Roman.
Yes.
Sorry.
But while on the subject of the Ravens, let's talk about another coach that might be in the hot seat, and that's not the Ravens coach at this particular moment in time. That's actually the Steelers head coach, Mike Tomlin. They lost 28-14 against our Ravens in the wildcard game. They've now lost 5 straight games. A lot of people concerned about Mike Tomlin's future over there, and how he just seems to continue preaching the standard, and just continuing to be mediocre. So, Andrew, what do you think is next for Mike Tomlin? And if you're a Steelers fan, are you okay with him continuing as your head coach moving forward?
What's next for Mike Tomlin is to be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've seen the same formula.
Yeah.
I think that it's Sunday right now. And we haven't got word that he's been fired.
Yep.
Probably not going to get fired. Mm-hmm. I think that Mike Tomlin is a phenomenal head coach. He used to be, at the very least.
Right.
But I don't understand. I understand the Steelers organization doesn't want to be the team that tanks. I get that.
Right.
The Steelers organization doesn't want to be the team that succeeds because in order to succeed, you need a quarterback in this league. Without a quarterback, you can't succeed.
Right.
Instead of getting a quarterback, they got Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
They got Justin Fields. Two people during the offseason where people were like, maybe he's not the answer for your QB1 situation.
Right.
In Denver, he failed.
Mm-hmm.
In Pittsburgh, he failed. He didn't do good. He didn't do great. He was a game manager. He did enough to allow the defense to take care of games.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw what happens when defenses can't take care of games.
Right.
The Steelers have tremendous talent. George Pickens, J.J. Watt, Cam Hayward.
T.J. Watt.
So, yeah, T.J. Watt. Thank you. I knew that. I just misspoke.
It's from that meme earlier where somebody else did the same thing.
But yeah, T.J. Watt, these are great individual players, but they just aren't meshing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
George Pickens' best plays from that playoff game we just watched was moonballs, 50-50 shots. He came down with it, of course. He's a great player. Mm-hmm. I think he's got a lot of an attitude problem.
Yeah.
And I think that attitude, I don't understand what it is about the Steelers organization.
Yeah.
The worst attitude at wide receivers. I mean, you had Antonio Brown. Almost said A.J. Brown. Antonio Brown. You had Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and now
Le'Veon Bell too.
Yeah, but he's not a receiver.
Oh, true.
Yeah, come on.
I didn't know you were just naming receivers. I thought you were naming attitude problems.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like all their running back rooms has attitude problems, but it seems like every time they get a wide receiver one, he's got an attitude problem.
That's very true. Yeah, they something interesting. They actually have 6 straight playoff losses, which is kind of crazy.
They haven't won a game since what? A playoff game since 2016?
Something like that. It's a long streak of playoff losses. But I think it just feels like, to me, Mike Tomlin's kind of losing the locker room. Like, the chemistry is just not there with George Pickens and his outbursts and a few drop passes here and there, and Russell Wilson just going out there being Russell Wilson, doing what he does.
It's the cycle of Pittsburgh.
It is. It's just there's no chemistry.
We start the season off great. We look great. We beat up on lower competition. We hit the hardest part of our schedule. We get humbled. Mm-hmm. We still think maybe there's a chance if we can squeeze into the Super, and we lose in the wild card.
Yeah, we saw that meme earlier. That was it was a good analogy. It was like they're in purgatory because they're good enough to not get a number 1 draft pick, but so bad that they're never going to win playoff games. So it's like, what do you do in that situation?
That's crazy. They literally hit the hardest part of their schedule and didn't win one of them.
Yeah. Yep.
Ooh. Jalen might be injured.
Uh-oh.
Jaden, not Jalen. Jaden.
Yeah, we're currently, the Washington and Buccaneers game is currently on as we're recording this. And Jaden Daniels just took a hit. I didn't actually see what happened, but
they hit him in between the knee and his. They hit him on his knee after he threw the ball, pretty much.
That's not good.
Yeah, and it was a late hit. Anyway, let's get back on track.
But yeah, I mean that's all I really had to say about it. It'll be interesting to see what happens over there because they're stuck in a very difficult situation with kind of that same preaching the standard, but ending up mediocre after the season's all said and done.
I don't even understand the standard they're talking about.
I don't either.
It's not like they follow up on any standard.
They really don't.
The locker room gets all hyped. They buy into their own hype, and then they get humbled every year. Every year it's like that.
It is.
What a couple of years ago, they went 10-0 to start the season and finished 11-6.
I think so, yeah. Something like that.
And first round exit.
Yep. Yeah, it's just they're lacking that thing to get them to the next stage, whatever that is.
A quarterback, competent quarterback, dude. That season they went 10-0 was, I think, the last season with Ben Roethlisberger.
That sounds right. I think you might be right.
And Big Ben, and this was during their playoff drought, because Big Ben was regressing. Mm-hmm. He wasn't doing too good.
Yeah.
I remember him finishing off that season and beating the Ravens.
Right.
And I thought, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Of course he's going to beat the Ravens.
You're right. Well, it'll be interesting to follow all those changes and see what goes on this off season. I feel like a lot of the worst teams are kind of in panic mode right now.
Yeah, and now I'm saying all this, but I have nothing but respect for the Steelers organization. Our rivalry is different from other rivalries. It's not just pure blind hatred.
Yeah.
Like, our rivalry is built on respect.
It is.
How hard our teams fought in the past just to win the games?
Right.
How can you look at, like, Troy Polamalu and Hines Ward, and then, like, the likes of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, Joe Flacco. I remember when they nearly ended Willis McGahee's life.
Yeah, right.
In the playoffs. And that was one of my first times watching Ravens playoff football, and I was like, oh my God, that man's dead. I hate the Steelers.
Right.
But nothing but respect for their team.
Yeah.
I remember how many times it broke my heart.
Right.
When they strip sacked Joe Flacco and took it back for a touchdown, Troy Polamalu.
Right.
Or Troy Palamu.
Palamalu.
Palamu.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Pat McAfee?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, that's valid. Yeah, a lot of respect for that organization, but it's just, they're in a very interesting predicament right now. Yeah, moving on from all those changes that we're seeing, again, those will be interesting to follow, but we're going to move on to...
Also, it was great to see Patrick Queen get humbled.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we're probably going to talk more about the Ravens-Steelers a little bit later.
Oh, we are. Let's talk a little bit about the AFC games. It's currently wildcard weekend while we're recording this. It'll be coming up on Divisional weekend when this comes out. So there are some games that haven't concluded at this point, but we're just going to go through the games that have. KC, Kansas City, obviously has the bye. Houston ended up beating the LA Chargers 32-12. Very poor performance from the Chargers. I don't know what the hell happened with Justin Herbert. He threw as many picks in that game as he's thrown all season. Or did he throw more? I think he might have thrown more.
He threw 4 interceptions in that game. He got 3 interceptions all season.
Yeah, that's insane. Did you catch any of that game, Andrew?
I watched all of that game.
Yeah,
I watched all of that game.
It was not good for the Chargers.
I definitely picked the Chargers to win this game.
I did
think
too.
The Chargers were favored to win this game. They were up 6-0 the entire first half until the last 50 seconds.
Right.
And then C.J. Stroud led a great drive down the field, scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
And then they got the ball back, drove down the field, kicked a field goal. And that was it. That was the game.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. That was the game.
Yeah.
The Chargers' defense in the first half was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
C.J. Stroud made some great plays, and he made some dumb plays, but that's what you expect from your sophomore quarterback.
Right.
Justin Herbert did not look like a playoff caliber quarterback.
No, he didn't.
At all this game. And I understand not all the picks were his fault, but to go from throwing 3 picks all season to 4 in one game, you have to take a lot of blame on that. Yourself.
Yeah.
The only production came out of Ladd McConkey and I think their tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just majority Vlad.
Right.
Lad. I can't speak tonight.
They had that a blocked extra point that got taken back too?
No, I'm sorry. I lied. It was all done by McConkey. Look.
Oh, yeah, it sure was.
Disley had 2 catches. Fisk had 1 catch. DJ Chark had 1 catch. Davis had 1 catch. And I really got to put a lot of that on the person who was throwing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, how can you not? Quarterback is the leader of the team at the end of the day, so.
And but speaking of the Chargers charging, you know who their offensive coordinator is, Mike, by any chance?
Tell me.
It's Greg Roman.
Oh, no way.
Greg Roman chokes again in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Big shocker. Now, I sat here and I was like, Jim Harbaugh's not going to come out here and lose his first game back in the playoffs. He's not going to. He just won a national championship.
Right.
You expect me to believe he's going to lose his first game? And he does.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking because I was rooting for the Chargers too, but hats off to Houston. They really capitalized.
For the Chargers when it was 6-0.
Yeah, I mean.
by the end of the half.
Yeah.
I was like,
Houston definitely capitalized.
Let's go, Texans!
They capitalized on every single mistake, and there was a lot of them. It was pick C. But so Houston's going to be facing KC. Andrew, who do you have taking that game?
This one's going to be interesting. Kansas City has been playing in a lot of one-score games this season. So I'm gonna have to give this to Kansas City. They have the better record, the better quarterback, the better defense. The only thing they don't have better is a pizza. Tried Houston pizza.
Right.
It's pretty good.
Right.
Papa John's, but no, I'm joking. I think that KC's going to win that one, obviously. I think that CJ Stroud's going to do his best to make it a game. I would love to see an upset, but it's hard to bat against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
It is. It really is. Very underwhelming season, regular season, but you know how he pops off in the playoffs, so can't ever bet against the Chiefs. Although I'll be honest, I do think KC's luck is going to run out at some point here soon. I don't see them making it to another Super Bowl this year. If they do, I'm going to cry. Yeah, I don't know. I think I might have KC winning that one. I think I'm going to have KC winning that one just because we've seen so many times how they put it together in the playoffs. And I don't know. I think Houston's going to... Obviously, KC's coming in freshly rested as well, which is huge. So I think it'll be a competitive game. But I got KC advancing past that one. But we also had Baltimore versus Pittsburgh. Our Ravens, like we mentioned earlier, ended up beating the Steelers pretty badly, 28-14, in yesterday's wild card game. I mean, what is there really to say? The Baltimore Ravens just popped off Derrick Henry 186 yards rushing, something like that.
Yep, off of 26 carries, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he went off. I think Lamar also threw 2 touchdowns.
He did 175 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
Lamar also tacked on 81 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
The one thing that stood out to me about this game was this was just pure bully ball.
It was.
This was, we're going to do what we want to do, and you're not going to stop us.
Yeah, there was a point when we saw T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward both on the sideline out of the game. So,
they could have just taken T.J. Watt out of the game. He was a non-factor.
Yeah, he was, which is crazy.
He didn't record a statistical stat.
Yeah, their defense...
Besides 2 missed tackles.
Their defense did not look how it looked earlier this season in this game. Baltimore just ran wild on them.
Props off, I don't know if you've seen, but Roger Rosengard, the rookie that we had on the offensive line, you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The one that was talking up with Myles Garrett?
Yeah.
Yeah. He shut down TJ that entire game.
Yeah, he stepped up pretty big.
Yeah. He was TJ's assignment the entire game. That's all he was doing.
I got to say the offensive line as a whole really stepped up too. And again, Baltimore's defense from where we were at the start of the season really stepped up. So we just really put it together all the way around.
Yeah. I mean, Lamar Jackson looked poised in the pocket. Derrick Henry ran wild.
Yeah.
I don't know what you can say besides like Lamar tossing 175 and then running the ball out the rest of the game.
Right.
But like it was just run. At one point we had 9 straight runs.
Yeah.
9 straight runs. And we did all that without Zay Flowers.
Yep.
Who we might be getting back next week.
Hopefully. But we also had Buffalo take on Denver. That was earlier today, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Buffalo won 31-7. It was not a good showing for the Denver Broncos, though it looked like it would be promising at first. I didn't catch it, but you said Bo Nix had a pretty nice deep shot early on.
He did. He had a really nice deep shot that went for a touchdown.
And that was the only one for the whole game.
Yeah, it was.
It was just an absolute slaughter across the board.
There was also a missed field goal. Allen had a really respectable stat line, 20 of 26 for 272 and 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
But
James Cook also went off. He had 120 yards and a touchdown.
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm worried about the Bills' offense because this game would have been 10-10 at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
So they scored 21 points afterwards, and none of those points were needed to win. Right. If the Bills go and face Baltimore next week like they are going to, and play the same first half, this game's going to be drastically different.
Right.
I'm telling you, that is not a winning formula.
I agree.
For the Bills at all.
I agree. Yeah, it would be very different. Baltimore is obviously a different animal than this Denver team that we saw today. So moving on to the divisional round next week when Buffalo is set to face Baltimore. Obviously, having all that said, I got to root for our Ravens, of course. I do think they're going to pull out the win. They beat Buffalo pretty easily earlier this season, although I will say I think Buffalo is much better now than they were at that point in the season. But to your point, I just don't think Buffalo is prepared for a next level team like the Ravens moving forward, especially, I don't know, just the unpredictability that offense has been playing with and the role that the Ravens have been on. They've been on fire all the way around. I think the Ravens are going to take that one as well.
I personally don't think. I think, okay, in your opinion, who's got the best defense in the playoffs? Out of all the teams that were in the playoffs on the AFC side.
On the AFC side?
Yeah.
Like currently, right now?
Nah, just overall. Like
overall.
Yeah, so we have obviously the Chiefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then after the Chiefs, you have the Bills, then you have the Texans, then you have after the Texans would be who's the 5 seed?
The Chargers.
The Chargers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it would be the Steelers,
Yep.
and then the Broncos. Who
Yep.
would have had the best defense?
I mean, I would have probably said Baltimore. I thought Pittsburgh had a pretty good one, but
Besides Baltimore.
besides Baltimore,
Yeah.
I would have probably said Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Pittsburgh probably has, first of all, they have the most expensive defense in the NFL. Expensive doesn't always mean the best.
Yeah.
But the Ravens ran all over that defense.
Mm.
They could have passed all over that defense.
Yeah.
But they ran all over it.
Mm.
Had themselves a day.
Mm.
Right?
Very true.
The Ravens have proved they can win either way. They can throw the football or they can run the football against you.
Right.
Doesn't matter. I don't think the Bills' defense is equipped to handle the rushing attack or the throwing attack.
Yeah.
I don't. I think the reason why the Bills lost today is bad play call. I mean, not lost, won. The reason why Broncos lost today is bad play call.
Right.
I don't understand what Sean Payton was thinking. Down 14 points. Or was it 14?
Um.
Down however many points he was at that point in the third quarter. To rush the ball twice to set up a 3rd and 8.
Right.
And then have Bo Nix throw some kind of shot down. Bo Nix looked terrible.
Right.
At points in that game, that man was just throwing up whatever he could get out of his hand.
Yeah.
I was really disappointed in that because the first drive he looked great. Then everything after that looked terrible.
Yeah.
Before halftime, he looked great.
Right.
Everything after that, I wouldn't expect that man to score a field goal the rest of that game, just based on the way that offense played. And that was multiple drives in a row where Sean Payton would run the ball twice and on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, try to throw for a first down.
Yeah.
That is not winning formula. If the run game ain't working, you have to throw.
Right.
If you're down 2 scores, get to throwing.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that there's a good chance they're going to end up outcoached in the next round as well. I think the conference championship is likely going to end up being KC and Baltimore again. Obviously, hoping Baltimore can pull out the win finally. Because, I mean, raise your hand if you want to see the Chiefs back in another Super Bowl. But yeah, so that's what we got on the AFC side. Moving on to the NFC side, Detroit Lions are obviously on a bye. They got the number 1 seed over there. The Green Bay Packers took on the Philadelphia Eagles earlier today. They won 22-10.
Congrats, Mike.
Yeah.
You've been killing it with your picks, man.
I have. For those that don't know, when we did early season picks, my early Super Bowl prediction was the Ravens and the Eagles, so we'll see if that pans out. But Eagles' defense looked pretty solid today. Their pass defense has gotten a lot better.
Jordan Love did not look solid today.
He did not.
3 interceptions, 212 yards.
Yeah, no touchdowns either.
Yep. 20 for 33. I mean, I spoke on this before on a previous episode of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Love is just a turnover machine. He's got to clean that up. He's really got to clean that up. Josh Allen had a pretty decent day.
Right.
Not Josh Allen.
Right. He did.
Josh Jacobs.
He did.
I can't talk today, dude.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs did
Take away my ability to speak.
He had a pretty good day. 81 yards from 18 carries and a touchdown. Saquon Barkley also had a good day. 25 carries for 119 yards. No touchdowns, but...
Jalen Hurts, 13 of 21, 131, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Eagles looking very solid across the board over there. Defense stepped up. Quinyon Mitchell stepped up, my favorite draft pick. So, yeah. I mean, all the things that I expected from the Eagles are starting to come to fruition. So, it's going to be the Eagles going against the Lions next week. Who you got in that game, Andrew?
The Lions, personally. It is hard for me to, every time I bet against Dan Campbell, he's proved me wrong. Yeah. I'm done betting against that man.
I got to say my hat is off to the Lions for everything they've been able to do with so many people injured. And Dan Campbell is a hell of a coach. He might be my favorite coach in the NFL right now. So while my mind tells me that I should probably...
My favorite coach right now is Mike Tomlin.
I should probably say I should say Detroit, but I gotta stick with my Super Bowl pick and pick the Eagles.
I don't think anyone's gonna be mad about that pick except for Detroit fans, and that's why I'm here picking Detroit because I believe. You know what? We should party up for that game. Yell at each other about it.
Yeah. But yeah, that'll be an interesting game for sure. Currently on is Washington versus Tampa Bay. It's currently 7-3 with 2 minutes left in the first half. So obviously that game is not concluded yet. Tomorrow night we're going to have Minnesota versus the LA Rams. So Andrew, I guess we'll start with a game that's currently on based on the 7-3 score that's on our screen. Who do you have taking this game?
It's most likely going to be the Commanders.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I would have picked them beforehand anyway.
Yeah.
And for tomorrow, it's going to be hard. That's a hard one.
That is.
Because the Rams have beat the Vikings already this season.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have to give props off to the Rams.
Yeah.
Who started off 1-4 and made the playoffs.
Right. Yeah, very, very true. They didn't look good at all to start the season. I would have to pick the Vikings for that one. I just think that they're a little bit more explosive, obviously more consistent too.
For the sake of not having to design 1,001 different playoff draft boards, I'll agree with that. But I think we could talk about implications if you want.
All right.
Alrighty then. So, if Washington wins and the Vikings win, the divisional matchup will be the Lions versus Washington and the Eagles versus the Vikings.
Right.
But if Tampa wins, it'll be Lions versus Vikings, Eagles versus Tampa.
Yeah.
And if the Rams win, we have the Lions, Rams, Eagles, Tampa, or the Lions, Commanders, Eagles, Rams.
Yeah.
Or Eagles, Vikings.
Right.
Basically, if Commanders win, they have to play the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Point blank. Otherwise, it's going to be the LA or the Vikings. And you guys will know for sure when this video comes out, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough to say right now because it's still so up in the air, but...
So we picked, for the sake of symmetry, the Vikings and the Commanders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Lions and the Commanders and the Eagles and the Vikings.
I'm going to pick the Eagles over the Vikings just because it's my Super Bowl pick and I got to stick with it. But I also do think they could edge out a very close win. I think that game would be very, very close.
Okay. And then Lions, Commanders.
It really kills me to say it because I think that I really like what Washington's done this year and I love to root for them. They're another Maryland team, technically, kind of. But I would have to pick the Lions over Washington.
That's fair. I would agree with that. And when it comes down to the conference championship, obviously Chiefs, Ravens, Eagles, Lions.
Yep. So, I don't know. I still think there's a good chance it could end up... I think it's either going to be the Lions and the Ravens or the Eagles and the Ravens. And I would love for my Super Bowl pick to be correct, by the way. It would make me feel really good about myself.
Mine would... I'd have to go back in time and help rig the game for Green Bay for mine to be correct.
Yeah. You have to put somebody else in at quarterback.
Mike, you want a new job?
But, if you don't have anything else to add, that's all we got for football this week.
The one thing I did want to add, and I forgot to mention this during the Ravens section, was hats off to the 5'8" safety that plays for Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw the hit that Adarius Washington did.
I did.
Again, twice. It happened twice.
Yeah.
But the one where he laid out Pat Fryermuth,
Mm-hmm.
love his name.
Yeah.
We're not going to love his name.
Yeah.
The one he laid him out, yeah, that man is 5'8".
Yeah.
How tall are you?
6 foot.
He is shorter than you.
That's pretty wild, actually.
He's 180 pounds.
Jesus.
And that man hit like a semi-truck.
That's impressive. That's actually really impressive.
Props off to him. He really helped turn the Ravens season around after they benched Marcus Williams in favor of him.
He did. He had a big hit. What was it, last week or 2 weeks ago? He had a big hit on a 4th down attempt before
on the goal line. Yeah, that was
when Zach Orr flung himself into him in midair.
Who was that against? Well, that was against the Texans, so that was week 17.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. A lot of those players are stepping up. So it's been fun to watch. It's been a fun postseason so far. I'm very excited for the divisional round.
I don't know. It's been a lot of blowouts and lopsided
That's
games.
true too.
Haven't really had a good one yet.
I will say I'm more interested in analyzing it than I have. I've had more fun analyzing than watching.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, I like seeing the Commanders in there and the Rams turning it around and getting in there, and then the Vikings too. I definitely didn't have the Vikings making it early on in the season. So yeah, a lot's up in the air right now. It'll be fun to follow. Obviously, we'll be back with more. When is our next? So our next one will be right before. It would be right after the conference championship, I think. So I think our next podcast we would know who's in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
If my math is correct. It was never really my strong suit.
We will know, because for conference championship, it will be Saturday, Sunday. We'll probably be watching the Sunday game.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of stuff to follow. If you're interested in following along with us, make sure to engage down there in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. Check us out on Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube. All those links are in the description. We're currently about to go film our wrestling episode, so if you're into wrestling content or you know somebody that is, come over there and check out that episode as well. We post our main episodes with all the football stuff on every other Wednesday, and then the wrestling stuff every other Friday. So come hang out and talk about some wrestling with us on Friday.
One last question for the people.
What's the question?
What are your guys' football hot takes? Make sure to put that in the comments.
Yeah, I want to see all the hot takes, especially the postseason in swing.
Who's your MVP pick?
Yeah, that should be the poll of the podcast right there, honestly. But yeah, that's all we got. Free State Sports. It's been Andrew and Michael. Saquon was not here because he had other obligations, and we'll catch you in the next one.